How are you?
Hey, happy to be here. I'm super excited to talk about Axelar and what you guys got going on.
Awesome. Great to have you here, Jason. How are you today?
I'm great. Yeah, just getting my day started. Got my coffee. I'm ready to go. How about you?
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, likewise. Got stuck in some trials in the middle, so we'll see how the connection holds up, but should be good.
That's awesome. Well, how do you want to do this? Do you want to kick us off or should I start?
Yeah, do you want to perhaps just kick off and give a little bit more background on yourself and what you're working on day to day, and maybe I can ask you a couple questions, you can ask me a couple, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so um, I run developer relations at Terraform Labs. What that means, like day to day, is developers on Terra are my customer, and so I focus on making sure that they have the tools that they need to, be successful building out their vision on the Terra blockchain. And so that ends up being a lot of developer tooling. That ends up being a lot of tutorials and guides, running hackathons and workshops and whatever's really needed. We really want Terra to be a blockchain where people can build whatever they want to build. And so, yeah, it's really my job to help those developers accomplish that.
Yep, makes sense. And I think you guys have done, an amazing job, like building the community and having, various projects build around, the ecosystem. How'd you do that, right? Like, what's the secret sauce, and kind of how you guys manage to be, so decentralized and have such an amazing community around you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a big part of that is one of the base offerings of the Terra blockchain, which is our stable coins. So Terra is a blockchain that has consensus enforced stablecoins. And so what that means is the logic for our stablecoins like UST is baked into the core of the blockchain. And so, I think you guys probably know a bit about application specific blockchains. In this case, the application that is built into the chain is UST or KRT, which is, UST is our US dollar pegged stablecoin, but then we also have the Korean won as a stablecoin, and we've got even the Filipino pesos as a stablecoin. So having all of these stablecoins available, I think, makes it attractive to developers who are trying to build applications that are, you know, not dealing with volatile currencies. Sometimes you just want to have a dollar and you want to be able to transact with the dollar. And so, yeah, that's definitely, um, I think, one of the reasons why developers choose to build on Terra.
Yeah, makes sense. And for those who are not familiar and joining us today, could you perhaps summarize in a couple of sentences, like how do you achieve stability for these stable coins? What's the underlying mechanism?
Yeah, so this is where it gets really interesting. The native token of the Terra blockchain is called Luna, and um, for every for a user who wants to actually create new UST tokens, you have to burn Luna at the equivalent value, and that Luna gets burned, and then UST gets created. And so basically, it's an algorithmic stablecoin where the the value of Luna can be transferred into these stablecoins and vice versa. So if you wanted to, sell UST or exit your stablecoin position, you could do that by minting new Luna tokens, and then you would get those Luna tokens valued at the market rate. And that's one of one of the other things that Terra has going for it is we have this really robust built-in Oracle network where we have the prices for all of these local currencies, and the prices are submitted by the validators. And so, um, that was needed in order to be able to do the burn mechanism for Luna to the stablecoins. And so, yeah, it's kind of a two-part system where we've got the Oracle prices, and then we've got the burn mechanism, which allows you to go from Luna to the different stable coins. And so, yeah, that's the base of it.
Awesome. Yeah, makes sense. And I guess what separates it from other, stable coins that we see in the market today is that this is decentralized, right? Like you said, this is at the consensus layer. All the validators are participating to, secure and provide stability of this, as opposed to, a lot of the other things that we see in the market, which has kind of a central issuer.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think I personally use USDC quite a bit just because it's accessible to me as an American. But there are obviously concerns about the backing of the token. I think we've heard a lot of those concerns recently. Especially there was a big Congress session on this exact topic, and I think that's one of the things that makes UST, which is the stablecoin pegged to the dollar. I think that's one of the things that makes UST really unique is that it doesn't have that centralized bank storing a dollar for every token. It's backed by the consensus of the chain, and so it definitely positions it as a decentralized alternative to some of these more centralized stablecoins.
Yep. Awesome. Makes sense. So, what are your plans, right, for the stablecoin and in particular UST? What are some of the short and long term goals? And in particular, I think you mentioned accessibility, right, of some of the other
Mm-hmm.
stable coins. And for those who want to access UST, how do we do that, right? How do we get there?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of our immediate plans and like immediate focuses is just getting UST to every single blockchain where there is a need or a desire for it. And so, all UST is created on the Terra blockchain, but then through various bridges like Axelar or IBC, it's possible to move UST to, different corners of the blockchain space. And so, we've been working closely with a bunch of Solana teams to get UST liquidity really going on Solana. We've been working, of course, with Ethereum teams like Curve to make sure that there's sufficient UST liquidity on Ethereum. Um, I think we're also very excited to expand to Avalanche and to expand to some of the other Ethereum L2 solutions. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that has been really fun is just there's a lot of people who want UST, and so it enables me to collaborate with so many teams in the space and just talk to so many people. I think this is a good example of that.
Yeah, for sure. So, what ecosystems would you say you guys are most, excited about, and where do you see most of the demand for USTs coming from?
Right. So we're currently seeing this is just a short term snapshot. Stuff changes every day, but we're definitely seeing a lot of demand on Solana. I think DeFi is just kind of exploding there in some ways, and there's a lot of competing dexes, and so there's definitely a lot of opportunity in the Solana ecosystem. I think we're also seeing a lot of interest, and these are places we haven't expanded yet. Avalanche and the Phantom blockchains. There's some cool protocols that are coming up. There's like an Aave fork and some other protocols that are looking really interesting. And so, I think our current focus has been um, Ethereum and Solana, but there's also some incentives happening on BSC, and we're trying to work with Polygon. So, I mean, really, any blockchain that wants UST can work with us, and we're happy to do whatever it needs to make it happen, you know. And and I definitely think like Axelar is going to be a big part of that going forward. I know that's one of the things that we talk about a lot is, you know, we've been waiting for this moment to be able to utilize like a truly decentralized bridge to bring UST to more places. And so, yeah, super excited about what's happening.
Awesome. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, if you want to take a decentralized asset, right, and move it across other decentralized platforms, you better have something decentralized in the middle, right? Or a
Absolutely.
decentralized protocol. Otherwise, whatever protocol you use will be your central issuer, right, of that asset. So we don't want that to
Yeah,
see.
yeah. Once it gets bridged over, the token dynamics change, right? And the risk changes depending on which mechanism you use to bridge. And that's something that you know, there's some bridges that maybe aren't ideal that are being utilized today. And I think that was because they were quicker because they were centralized, you know. But I know we're obviously very interested in, you know, a fully decentralized solution that matches our fully decentralized stablecoin.
Yep, makes sense. And I guess the goal, right, is not just to have UST across these platforms, but also vice versa, is that allow users that may have UST on these platforms to use different applications, right, that are
Hmm.
building around Terra ecosystem, which are fantastic. I think one example is Anchor, which right now I think provides something like 20% interest rate, right, on
Yep.
UST. And for me, I think it would be super exciting to see people access this application from anywhere they are, right?
Yep.
And kind of expand the reach of it and distribution. Um, I guess speaking of Anchor, right? So it provides, today this very good interest rate for UST. Could you tell us a little bit, maybe on the very high level, what is the mechanism does it use, and whether or not this interest rate is actually sustainable in the long term?
Yeah. No, this is a really good question. It's also a topic of a lot of debate in the Terra ecosystem. So Anchor, it it operates very similar to like a traditional lending platform. If you're familiar with Compound Finance or Aave on Ethereum, the basics are the same. You can deposit collateral. Right now, it supports Ethereum and Luna as collateral, but Solana and Atom are on the way shortly. And so you deposit the collateral, and then you can borrow UST against that collateral. So the main difference here, and I think what makes Anchor really unique, is all of the collateral is actually staked with validators. And so the collateral itself is earning yield somewhere between 8% to 15%. And when you deposit that collateral, the yield generated by it gets redirected to the UST lenders. So on one side, you've got the lending side where you deposit UST and you earn 20%. The other side is the borrowing side where you deposit collateral and borrow against it. And so it's using the yield of the collateral to pay out the lenders. And I think this is what makes it stand out from other lending markets is, most of the time, like on Compound, the yield for the lenders comes from the borrowing demand. And in this case, that borrow demand is kind of it's supplemented by the yield generated by the collateral. And so each loan is like triple collateralized. And so you've got quite a bit of collateral generating yield for that loan that's then going to the lending side. And so um, I definitely think it is sustainable, especially as we onboard more staked assets. Um, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when B Atom or Atom gets added as collateral because there isn't currently a Atom lending platform. So it's definitely going to open up quite a bit of um, you know, demand. I'm guessing or hoping, and yeah, in the long term, I think it's really hard to say if it will be able to offer 20% forever. But um, I think as long as we keep adding, you know, better collateral and more collateral, and as long as proof of stake yields are competitive, I think it should be good to go for a while. But
Yep.
again, that's definitely a topic that's being debated a lot in the Terra space in general.
Yep. Makes sense. And I guess to get this collateral in, right, you need what do you need? Do you need other interoperability or bridging solutions as well to help anchor?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think um, we've been partnering with Lido on a lot of that part of it because they're like one of the leaders in liquid staking derivatives, and so they're definitely handling a lot of the infrastructure surrounding collateral and bridging and all of that jazz. But in the case of like B Sol, there's a lot of platforms on the chain that are already offering liquid staked Solana tokens, and so I think you know like there's an option for us to work with multiple for providers for each token, and that way we're giving users options, and we don't have to be locked into just one source or one bridge, and it's all about what the anchor governance people decide to vote on.
Awesome. Yep, makes sense. And I guess I think that's one of the reasons we're super excited to work with you guys is that there's the demand to kind of go both ways, right? Which is you have interesting assets that you want to distribute to other ecosystems, but there are other interesting assets in the ecosystem that you want to bring back to Terra, right? To facilitate
Absolutely.
like applications like Anchor. So I think like next year is going to be super exciting as we enter this multi-chain world, and hopefully a lot of these usability issues and a lot of fragmentation will be addressed.
Absolutely. Let me see. All right. You want to switch this around a little bit? Is it okay if I ask you some questions?
Yeah, go for it.
So, I mean, from the start, I know I've hinted a little bit that Axelar might be a bridge of some sort, but can you elaborate on what Axelar is and um, what problem are y'all trying to solve?
Yeah, so on the high level, Axelar is a universal interoperability network that connects multiple different ecosystems, right? So it's not a bridge per se. It's a network, and you can think of it as a translation layer that can help you go from one ecosystem to another, move the assets back and forth, but also move the information across different ecosystems. um, at the core, there are really two layers that contribute to the Axelar stack. There is the network layer, which is responsible for making connections to the different ecosystems, translating message types, routing them across them, and delivering. And then there is the application layer stack that's on top of the Axel network that allows you to build applications that are really multi-chain native in some sense, right? So um, one of the goals that we're trying to solve is to solve the fragmentation, the user experience, and this is where the second layer comes in that we're working at.
That's awesome. So more than a bridge, um, which I think bridging is one of the applications that's easy to understand, but it is much more than that, right?
It's a lot more. I think you can think of it as a platform, right? I think bridges are inherently, if we go back and define it, are pairwise objects. Okay, so what that means is that you go, from A to B. How do you go from B to C? There's another bridge, maybe another connection. How do you swap between them? How do you route between them? And so they don't really extend across,
Right.
many ecosystems, and they also pretty limited to token transfers. Many of them that you see today, are still centralized. So kind of the approach that we're taking is to just go back and think, right? How do we really solve interoperability for the ecosystem? And it comes down to two things. You have to make it easy to build, new connections, and you have to make it easy to build cross-chain enabled applications, right? And so kind of the stack that we're working on is kind of addressing both problems at the core.
That's awesome. So I think this, ties into my next question pretty well, which is, um, there's a lot of people who are trying to solve similar issues using different mechanisms. I think I know you're aware of IBC, which is popular in the Cosmos ecosystem, which really focuses on just connecting Cosmos chains to each other. I know Polkadot has their own standard which allows the similar, um, and then there's a number of centralized bridges or various stages of different yeah, decentralization is a spectrum. So people are at different spots on the spectrum. How would you say, Axelar compares to some of the other interoperability solutions, and especially, to expand on that, like where do y'all sit on the decentralized spectrum?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, on the high level, right, there's kind of a four properties that I think we provide with the Axelar, right? I think, as I mentioned, it's sort of decentralized network, right? So just like Terra runs a blockchain and a validators to run the consensus to ensure the stability of UST. Axelar similarly runs a consensus based around Cosmos SDK, and validators are collectively responsible for ensuring the cross-chain functionalities of the Axelar network, right? So it's an open network; anybody can join, submit commands, run requests, kind of run a validator node or a regular node on the network, and there is no limitation there. Two, it's a universal platform, so meaning that the mechanisms that we're working with, as opposed to a lot of the other solutions that you see there, allows you to easily onboard new chains with as minimal effort as possible, right? So just to give you an example, for certain EVM chains, we can run commands through the network and onboard them in something like 10, 15 minutes, assuming the validators kind of register to vote for it, right? So
That's
no
incredible.
limitations on the consensus, kind of layer one, layer two, as long as like the stack is support certain features, then like that's it. We run it. It's EVM stack. We support it. And even if you look at, for instance, like centralized players, like centralized exchanges or other folks, like they take months to onboard a new chain or a new platform, right? And I think we really build a stack to optimize and make that experience both open and also frictionless.
That's
Um,
incredible.
yeah, and I think the third big thing is that being this universal connectivity platform allows us to execute various service features for the ecosystem, right? And I think one of it is very important is this routing layer, right, across between Cosmos, between EVM chains, between Polkadot ecosystems, and so on and so forth. And so what that means is that as more connections are added, um, everybody who's already been connected can just benefit from them and compose without having to build additional bridges or additional connections. So one new connection opens up right away connectivity to all other connected networks through the Axelar, and that's really what gives you ability to serve the ecosystem entirely, right? And scale it beyond just a couple chains that you connect through.
Right. I mean, I think super important because we see the rate at which, especially new EVM chains come online. I think there's a new one, at least one a month, probably more than that, but there's a lot happening in terms of like EVM chains. So um, I think it's really smart that y'all worked out like a super quick onboarding for that. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and I think on that, one thing to add is, because again the network is open and everything, what we've done is we try to expose also the building blocks to make other types of connections that maybe are not supported by us from day one easier, right? So there are various kind of finality gadgets. There are various multi-party computation cryptographic protocols. There are various voting gadgets that you can leverage and just build a connection, let's say, to whatever Rust based or WASM based or other ecosystem that maybe is not integrated through the stack on day one. And that's really also something we thought about, is that how do we continue extending and building on top of it, as opposed to just having to wait at a couple of people, the core team, to make these connections. You can go and build it, write a module, you can propose an upgrade to the network, and down the line maybe we'll make it even simpler by writing like a couple smart contracts on the network to make those connections.
Right. Yeah, and it's definitely more than just EVM because you're obviously working with Terra and some other non-EVM chains. So, um, I think EVM is an obvious target because they have a huge need, but that's shifting a little bit to some of the Cosm Wasm chains. So yeah, it's um, super interesting how you're able to connect to, you know, many different consensus engines, many different finalities, and make it all talk to each other. Um, so yeah, this brings up another question, which is, I guess one of my complaints with um, current, interoperability solutions is if I bridge and like let's say we're going to bridge to Avalanche, and I want to bridge UST from Ethereum to Avalanche, and I bridge UST from Terra to Avalanche. A lot of times those will come across as two different tokens, and so that creates a usability problem, which is that you now have two different versions of the same thing on the chain. And I've been thinking a lot about the fungibility of said assets. And so I'm curious, does Axelar have any solutions to this usability problem, or what are your thoughts on that? And this could be for future looking, of course. But yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great question. My strong, I think, belief is that in the long term, the users are not going to be exposed in the bridging technologies period, right? So what that means is that the world that I want to see, and the world towards which we're working with our stack, is that an application can just integrate an asset, let's call it UST, and allow users to use this asset within the application from anywhere they are, right? From any wallet, from any blockchain that they could originally have a version of this asset, right? So if you have it on Terra and you have a wallet, there is a way to interact through this wallet with an application that's built on Avalanche. And in this process, the application will have to you know perhaps modify the stack a little bit and include like some of the application layer protocols that we are working on also. But underneath it, there will be all the bridging kind of done transparently for the users, right? And that may involve even a couple, like let's say like bridging paths that you could take to deliver an asset from the source chain like Terra to an Avalanche. And maybe you swap between one version of this UST to another version of UST underneath it, but user gets exposed to one unified view in some sense, and the developer then just decides, okay, I think this is a good decentralized solution. Maybe this is another good decentralized solution. I can to minimize my risks somehow. Maybe I can work with them together. It's not as trivial as I make it sound. I think there are some security challenges to this. If one solution breaks, what happens with the other? But the world towards which I want to work to is that, yeah, users don't go through the bridges, don't see various versions, and it's sort of unified at the application layer by the developers.
Right. That makes sense. And I definitely believe in the same vision. You know, I think a couple years ago when I was imagining what a multi-chain world would look like, I definitely wasn't imagining like double and triple wrapped assets. And so I think we have to work towards a solution like you're describing, where it is more transparent to the user. I've been in a situation where, let's say I bridge from the Cosmos hub to Osmosis, and then I bridge from Osmosis to Terra, and I now have a double wrapped asset, and it's just a very confusing user experience. So, um, I think I agree. The solution is probably just better integration, integrated wallets, multi-chain wallets. I definitely think that's going to be important in the future. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there are two paths to it, right? Like, there's like step one, you build good connectivity and just basic, infrastructure underneath it to make those connections secure and reliable, right? And two, and then you improve the application layer and the usability of it. I think we couldn't really improve the application layer and usability until I think this year pretty much, where connectivity in a decentralized and robust way will be hopefully coming to life, including through Axelar. And then from there, we'll focus on solving the layer above it, which is the interaction with all of these different assets and applications.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so I mean, one of the reasons why we're doing this AMA is to discuss the recent mainnet rollout of Axelar. Could you expand a little bit on what that means? Like, is the chain running today in mainnet? Um, is bridging currently possible, or when do you expect? I know I heard about satellite, which is going to be one of the, I think, first, web interfaces or dApps built on top of Axelar. Um, can you give a little details on what the rollout looks like and kind of what the next steps are for y'all?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So effectively, what this means is that we spun out a version of the Axelar mainnet and started producing blocks on it, and setting up initial connectivity across the networks, including Terra, Moonbeam, sort of Avalanche, a bunch of other ecosystems as well. And the next weeks are going to look for us as switching a lot of the or onboarding a lot of the partners to this network, right? So including the validators that have been participating with us on the test 6 months, helping us build the network and giving us feedback. So we're going to be onboarding them to the mainnet, increasing the validator set, flipping various dashboards and tools and the front ends that have been in works on the network to the to the mainnet instance, and subsequently really rolling out and making this accessible to everyone, including some of the we are working on to encourage UST to go and flow across different ecosystems with you guys.
Yeah, I know we've really been looking forward to this, and the team really talks about Axelar as a solution to a really difficult problem. And so, yeah, beyond excited to have, I think first off, congratulations. I know getting a chain online and all the coordination that happens, it's kind of insane. So, yeah, definitely really looking forward to seeing things spin up and roll out. I've got one more question, which is around NFTs. I can see a lot of people from the Terra ecosystem listening to this call. There's a bunch of NFT avatars out there. That's one of the things that's been kind of exploding on Terra is just NFTs in general, and I think it's a really challenging problem to bridge NFTs because of the different metadata standards that exist, and you got to be able to translate from one standard to another standard. I'm curious, do you? see Axelar potentially being a solution to this, or um, does it enable potentially NFT bridging in the future? And yeah,
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think one of the things that we've done is that allow just an arbitrary general message passing through the platform, right? That we're gonna also enable in a coming months. What that means is that you're not limited to pass kind of assets and information that was built by us or by the team. And so what that means is that if you're working on NFT or any other asset, really, you can build your own kind of smart contracts on top of it and build your own protocol, and then leverage the Axel network to route it and deliver it and finalize it across different environments. And we'll provide some templates, we'll provide some examples how to do this and how to make it easy and accessible. But depending on what standard you have, maybe you have to tweak something or you have to customize it, and all of that is going to be available. So there is no limit there.
that's awesome. So, I mean, that sounds pretty reasonable. I've been trying to keep this high level, but basically a smart contract on each side. A message goes between the two, tells it to either mint or hold as an NFT. That seems very doable and not that difficult.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, right. And then from there, like, you integrate those contracts with applications directly, right? So you can imagine a world where if you have an NFT, you want to take a loan against it, right, in an application on a different chain, and so you can issue a request to this contract, use the underlying interoperability infrastructure to deliver it to the other ecosystem, and then call a contract on the destination chain that locks it, gives you some type of asset in return for this collateral, and you go from there. So I think we've been in the world where we issued a lot of these NFTs, I think, over the last year, and I think next year or two is going to be seeing interesting applications around them and then making them accessible to anyone.
Right. That makes sense. Um, can I ask one more question, which is we've heard a bit, we know Axelar is working with Terra. I believe Axelar is working with Avalanche, and you mentioned Moonbeam. What are some of the other opportunities or networks that you're working with or wanting to work with in the short term?
Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of others, right? I think in general, you can think of it as right now as a kind of translation layer, right, between the entire Cosmos ecosystem and a bunch of other ecosystems, including EVM chains. We're also working on a proof of work module that will support assets like Bitcoin. Um, and Yeah, I mean, I think for EVM chains is like pretty straightforward for us to onboard. Like I said, for any Cosmos chain, effectively what you can do is you can issue an IBC transaction to the Axelar, and then use it as this cross-chain routing layer to deliver your asset to all the other ecosystems that we're supporting, right? So if you're either building an asset within the Cosmos ecosystem and want to distribute it across others, or the other way around, like you see some assets in the ecosystem on EVM chains or somewhere else that you want to get into your application, you can make this IBC connection and then leverage the protocol to give you this distribution channels.
That's awesome. So there's no limit to the potential here, which is, I think, what makes it like especially exciting. I think it's a new breed of interoperability, especially like you guys are leveraging the Cosmos SDK similar to we are, which brings a lot of advantages. And yeah, definitely looking forward to collaborating in the future and seeing where this partnership can go.
Awesome. Likewise. Well,